with its only mate, an all-enduring spirit on the whiskey trail.
And sit down, compose oneself, and begin. Gordon Dundas, we are
Hello.
episode 4. Come on in. Episode 4. Come on in. How are you?
I'm very well, very well, very well. How are you?
Here we are, episode 4 of series 3, and you have got the count of number of episodes.
32 episodes. That is like a box set on Netflix.
That really is. What were you doing when you were 32, Gordon? That's what we all want. Everyone at home, what were you doing when you were 32? We are 32 today with Whisky Unscripted.
What year would that be?
I know.
What were we doing when 32? That's a long time ago. I think I was working for Whisky Magazine, 32. Yeah, I was. So I was working for Whisky Magazine. So yeah, that was I was working for Whisky Magazine. Fantastic.
Good stuff. I'd like to know more about that, Gordon. That's something to discuss in the future.
Yes.
So, Gordon, we have got we're going across the worlds for this episode.
We are. Now, we're not able to fly anywhere, but by the amazing technology that we have at Whisky Unscripted, we've managed to go all over to the other side of the world. But a little bit more about that later on.
Yes. The reason I'm giggling is because I thought we might go in for a bit of continuity. We recorded this interview yesterday, and even I thought maybe I should wear the same top and pretend it's a seamless.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not going to happen.
I haven't done that. No. So, sorry.
If you're listening to this on a podcast, this makes no sense, but we're now recording it on Zoom, so we're putting it on YouTube, so you can come and see us there as well.
Whisky Unscripted on YouTube. There we go.
Gordon, we have tasked you every week for looking over the news around the world of whiskey, but I think there might be only one story in town.
There's really only one story in town, and that is the fact that there is a 4-month, well, they've dropped the tariffs on Scotch whisky in the US, which we're very happy about, certainly for an initial 4-month period, which is really, really good and very exciting, gives us an opportunity to assess how we take advantage of that, with the assumption, hopefully, that will then continue on afterwards. I really can't see them coming back on, but you never know. But yeah, that's just the biggest story in town in the Scotch whisky industry.
There was a figure quoted by industry chiefs that it's cost about 500 million. Would that be? Yeah. Is that the figure?
Scotch sales are down. Scotch sales are down 30% in the US. We also must say, in the same breath, bourbon has been under tariffs coming into the EU as well. So it has been something that's been both ways, and it's something that we've spoken about quite a lot on Whisky Unscripted. But I was speaking with Daniel, who's in charge of the US market, and he says it's a great position to be in full marks the SWA and the government for negotiating and working on that. That is fabulous, and it will really help us, because the way just so people maybe don't know, the way that whiskey is sold in the US is a 3-tier system. So you have an importer who then work with a distributor who then sell to retailers. So everybody in America sort of takes their slice of the pie, as it were.
Right.
And so those tariffs, although 25%, are sort of multiplied throughout all of that. So it makes it really, really difficult for Scotch to be competitive pricing a single malt. So, it's and that's hence the sort of hit on sales. So it's great that they've seen sense, and it makes a lot of sense in the current climate. So really, really happy about that.
And America's still probably the biggest market for Scotch whisky or single malt.
Yeah, it is a big market, of course, just because there's 330 million odd people there. But obviously, in the US, they've been suffering a bit from, on trade or on premise, as it's called over there, being closed as it has here. Although things generally seem to be opening up a little bit in the US. But again, the off trade has been strong, the off premise, and so. Yeah, look, it's from our perspective, and from it's great for the industry. It's great for the small players. It's great for everybody, and something which is about. I'm glad it's happened. So full marks to everybody involved.
That's fantastic. My last point would be how it came to be. I know it's politics, but you would never think a president whose mother was born in Scotland would have levied taxes like that onto Scotch whisky. So It sort of baffles me, but I'm not a politician, and I'm glad they're gone. And I'd love to speak more about America and the more about American markets and about American bars. But we'll do that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
In an American episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gordon, can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
What are you drinking?
Well, as we mentioned in the last episode, the World Whisky Awards came out recently, and Tamdhu did quite well with Iain Whitecross's Single Cask. Now, look at this. This is, I might put it up in front of the camera.
If you're listening to this, get home and chuck on YouTube to Whisky Unscripted and look at the colour of that.
Dark European oak. I know Iain, who's the assistant distillery manager there, assistant to Sandy, have I got Sandy's here? No, I don't have Sandy's there. Sandy likes an American oak style American oak sherry cask, which is lighter in color. This is just gorgeous in color, rich, dark color. Those rich, dark fruits, those beautiful flavors that come from the European oak, award-winning single cask, and very, so I thought, I've got an open bottle. I'm going to try a little bit of that. So beautiful.
But this was official, the official world's best single cask.
Not yet. Category winner. It probably should go on to be the world's best, but that will be announced in a month's time. But it's won its category, so it's gone as far as it can at the moment. We've released some great single casks over the last few years, and this is another prime example, selected by Mr. Whitecross. So
well done, Mr.
Fantastic. And so that's a great single cask available on tamdhu.com. Should you be interested?
I'd love to talk, we'll do that again, position in warehouse, that would be in the old dunnage warehouses at Tamdhu, of course, and nothing to beat those old warehouses to create something like that. What's the ABV? Sorry, you just mentioned it.
57.8. Oh no, 57 flat, sorry, not 8, 57 flat. So just lovely red berries, all those lovely flavors coming through. Nice bit of alcohol strength. Now, what have you got there?
I've got something I'm not going to mention because I drink this later on in the episode.
Oh, this is the continuity bit.
Yes.
Although my jumper's not the same.
Correct, but that's, so this is a lovely dram. Of course, it's all the description. If you've come to this podcast reading the description, you'll know we're going to head down to New Zealand, and this lovely whiskey is from the South Island.
Fabulous.
But you'll get more of this chat later on, so it's a wonderful whiskey, as we talked about. It's cask strength as well.
Fabulous.
So we'll just have to hear later on what I think about it.
Very excited. Fabulous.
Gordon,
fabulous.
This will come out a couple of days after International Women's Day. And I thought, since we are speaking to Sarah Elsom down there in New Zealand, who is a master distiller, what great way just to have a quick chat about the women in whiskey that have been and that are.
Well, I mean, I think it's an ever increasing pool of people, and that is absolutely fantastic. And
Yes.
I mean, we've spoken about many of the fantastic female master blenders that there are around, and there, there's the famous ones, there's the less famous ones, but there are a good percentage of female master blenders who are making whiskey and creating whiskey. I think that that is fabulous. And we've had on here also, and it's very true of Iain McLeod, the amount of women who've worked at Glengoyne, for example, as tour guides and then come into different parts of the business. So we've got people who come into marketing. We've got Lauren who's gone into production, and the Mash Lass who is actually on a podcast, Spirit of Whiskey, this week as well. So I've been on there as well. Another great podcast worth listening to and hearing Lauren's perspective as a lady in the industry. And then also just, I think, the amount of women who write about whiskey, women who knows and taste, and ambassadors, and it's an ever increasing pool of people, and it's fabulous. And
Gordon, was that always the case? I guess not.
No, it's not always the case. And 20 years ago, it was a much more male dominated. Probably back in the times when we were saying that whiskey was much more of a masculine drink, and there was such a thing as a ladies' whiskey, which is complete and utter rubbish. There isn't such a thing. Any whiskey's for anybody, and that's what I really like about the whiskey movement, which was started by Georgie and Becky, really just saying it's everybody's whiskey. It's not a male thing. It's not a female thing. It's everybody's, and I think that's absolutely correct. And all power to it. And at Iain McLeod, we do a lot of, we have a lot of ladies working for us, and we have a lot of across the, who've come up through the business as well. So it's fabulous. And even somebody like Emma, who's our assistant blender, fantastic. Another tour guide who decided that she wanted to become a blender and understand that side of the business. So brilliant, really, really good.
And it's not only that, there's more women coming into it because the industry is getting bigger as well. So as they're coming in, hopefully it's expanding and we can take in a lot more people.
Absolutely.
Well, women and men. And I just like a quick little doff the cap to some of the historical figures. We've talked about one with John Campbell, the legendary Bessie Williamson of Laphroaig, who was really one of the...
absolutely.
I'm just trying to think of the person that guides the light, a guiding light.
Absolutely.
Forerunner.
Absolutely. And Bessie took Laphroaig and really ran with it to the point that she then realized this is actually nearly outrunning me. And she understood that the brand was very much something that needed to go to the next level. And she was instrumental in getting Laphroaig to where it is now. And John, who's been on the show many, many episodes ago, I think round about episode 6, talked passionately about her involvement in Laphroaig, and there's been littered actually through history of whiskey. There's been some serious impact in the industry from women. So it's not. I mean, it is ultimately more male dominated, but not so much now. But even in the history, there's been some iconic women involved.
Yes. Again, one last one from history, I should say, is the Robertson and Baxter family. Robertson and Baxters became Edrington. And Edrington, as we know, Macallan, Highland Park, Cutty Sark, one of the biggest whiskey companies in the world. But they were Robertson and Baxter. And Mr. Robertson was married to a redoubtable woman called Agnes Robertson. And Agnes Robertson stood by his side as he created this empire. And she had 14 children to Mr. Robertson, which I didn't know if you knew that, Gordon. And when Glasgow University opened its doors to women in 1884, with 14 children under her belt, she signed up and was one of the first ladies to attend Glasgow University, sadly dying 2 years later before she got her degree. But that family went on, and 2 generations later, the last of the Robertson family, 3 sisters, the heiresses, were left with the big portfolio in the early 60s. And they got in the original Morgan Grenfell. Well, no Morgan Grenfell, the bank, but the original guy came over to Scotland, spoke to the ladies and said, listen, turn your fortune into a charitable trust, which was called the Robertson Trust, and we'll put an umbrella company over the distilleries. What do you want to call it? And they said, after our holiday cottage, we used to go to as young girls in Dumfriesshire, Edrington, and that the 3 ladies passed on the charitable trust and the name Edrington to history.
I mean, there you go. Now, you see, that's quite interesting because I didn't know that was Edrington, and that I didn't know where that name came from. So I have learned something on Whisky Unscripted, which is great. The other classic, although just so that another holiday sort of area that's the name of a distillery, can you think what this one might be?
Ailsa Craig, something? I was thinking down Ayrshire.
Ailsa Craig would be an interesting holiday place.
Yeah, so on the islands.
So Ardmoor Distillery up in the Highlands, owned by Victoria, is a peated Highland whiskey. Historically associated with the Teacher family. The Teacher family, who were Glasgow, serious sort of Glasgow whiskey people, probably about as big as the Langs, if you know what I mean. Similar sort of. Of course they did. And they had a house on Ardmore Point, which is very close to where I come from. I think I've mentioned this before, but they took the name of that Ardmore and took it up to the Highlands and called the distillery Ardmore. So a similar story. So another one. So that's quite interesting. So yeah.
Well, Gordon, I think that's us covered the news. We'll get lots of little sections we'll put in, but I think we're going to just go down to New Zealand because we met up with Sarah with a real cracking interview. It lasts just over half an hour. And I think we'll devote the rest of the programme in the week of International Women's Day to one of the master distillers in the industry. And maybe you want to tee this up, Gordon.
Well, no, absolutely. I just want to say a big thank you to David Swift, who I know listens to the podcast. I know he's a fan of Tamdhu down there in New Zealand. Obviously instrumental in getting us to the top 50 listened podcasts in New Zealand. Thank you, David. He obviously listens to it.
Kept on downloading it again and again.
David sent me really enthusiastically and very kindly sent me 2 samples of the whiskey, which we're going to sample with Sarah. These are very special whiskies. You're going to sample that one as well. It's Cardrona Distillery on the South Island of New Zealand, and I had a look at some of the pictures. It's, oh my gosh, it's just like Scotland. So it's amazing. Very exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's go and meet Sarah, which is fabulous. Let's welcome Sarah Elsom on to Whisky Unscripted. Sarah is master distiller at Cardrona? Is that right? Have I got that all right?
You got that all right. Hang on.
So live from the South Island in New Zealand, my favourite country. Hold on, I'm just going to take these off. It's a bit hot in here.
There's a surprise coming. There's something coming. Here he goes.
Taking my eyes off already.
What's he got on? Hey!
There you go.
Yes. For all those who may not know what I've just shown, this is a Team New Zealand shirt. Team New Zealand about to go up against the Italians in the America's Cup final in Auckland. I think, unfortunately, it's been postponed because Auckland's in lockdown, but Team New Zealand all the way. So, yeah, New Zealand. Sarah, great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And can I just say, you're in a fabulous room. Could you just explain, before we get into all the details, where are you? Paint a picture.
Yeah, sure. Well, the Cardrona Distillery itself is, we're in the mountains already. So if I was to show you outside, we're right and nestled in between 2 mountain ranges. Where I'm sitting right now is upstairs from our distillery door, our reception area, and I am bordered by the boss's whiskey collection, actually. They don't keep it at home. It's a little safer out here at work. Sort of. And they're a private collection behind me here.
Fantastic.
So it's not a bad backdrop for a...
Yes.
And so I want to actually thank an avid listener, an avid fan of one of our whiskies, David Swift from New Zealand, who off his own back beautifully sent me a couple of your whiskies, Sarah. Here they are. I've not tried either of them, but having looked at them, they look beautifully powerful, strong. I'm really looking forward to trying them with a drop of water as well. So we'll come to them in a minute. And also, Gordon, you have a whiskey from Cardrona as well?
I do. I'm putting the lid back on because I haven't tasted them much. But this technology business, Gordon, you drove me to have a drink. So just in a little soupçon, but it's absolutely, I can't wait to get a proper try of the growing wings.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is available in the UK, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. So Sarah, South Island, New Zealand, pretty Scotland-like, or the other way around, whichever way you want to describe. You know, they're very similar landscapes. What a great place to start a distillery. Let's hear a bit about how it all happened, please.
Yeah, sure thing. So Cardrona is all the dream of one woman. Her name is Desiree Whitaker. And coming home to New Zealand after a stint in the UK was always something that was going to happen. And it wasn't always going to be a single malt distillery. She followed her father into the dairy industry and did very, very well in that industry. And that was sort of that kind of platform for having a little bit of startup capital, is that she was able to sell a farm that she grew and made into a successful business. So there was this opportunity to pursue a passion project, and that is where this all stemmed from. It was for a short time going to be a perfumery, but of course, the more you research the constituents of perfume and the alcohol component, the easier it is to be led astray, and a distillery became the kind of the real focus. And single malt, absolutely, that's all we do. We work with malted barley only to create not just whiskey. We do make a single malt vodka, a gin, and liqueurs, all from the same base. So when we mash in, there's no differentiation between the wash for the whiskey as there is for the vodka. So it is unique. It is a really special place. It's stunning. A lot like Scotland, as you say. A little hotter in summer, perhaps a little
cooler. It's not difficult, to be honest. Not difficult.
A little hotter, yeah. We do run around the distillery in shorts for most of the year.
Wouldn't that be nice? Even just running around a distillery would be nice. I mean, of course, in New Zealand, you're not really in that much of a lockdown. Would that be fair?
Where we are in the South Island, we're currently at what we call level 2, which means we cannot have groups of over 100. So it is fairly business as normal.
Gosh, groups of 100. Wow, yeah. That'd be lovely.
And when we go to the pub, we have to sit down right now, so we get served rather than having to go.
You get to go to the pub. To be fair,
yeah,
I can almost feel it.
We can't complain at all.
No, and that's full marks to New Zealand. We're not gonna labour and talk about that. That's not what we're here to talk about. So Cardrona has been great story, and I did see in the notes that she got influence from some people around the industry. Dave Pickerel, for example, from Maker's Mark, what a legend, and unfortunately left us a couple of years ago. But just give us a little bit of background in terms of the sort of style of Cardrona. What sort of style of whiskey have you gone for in terms of, is it peated, is it not peated, is, that sort of thing?
Sure. I think the style is ultimately a reflection or a paying homage to that very traditional Speyside style. It is a unpeated malt. It is very sort of fruit forward, elegant. It is a very powerful expression. What you have in your bottle, they're all cask strength. When Distilleries started this out, yeah, you got it. She actually had no intention of launching a whiskey before 10 years in barrel. Mm-hmm. We were gonna hold out. And so what we have in front of us are effectively progress reports. And it was really important for us to communicate that it was a young whiskey, but this is what's happening in the cask right now, not a version that we've watered down and presented to you. So all of our launches, all of our whiskey expressions available are cask strength. And it's another great talking point for us. We've got people walking in the door that are learning about whiskey for maybe the first time. And it's really quite awesome to pour them something that we then get to talk about how water can change and open it up. So it's been a lot of fun having cask strength whiskies on the floor.
And have you been involved from the beginning? And what I mean is like in the procurement of the equipment and all that sort of element of it?
No, that's all Desiree. She spent years researching for pulling this together. I was hired when this place was a building site. So the team arrived a little earlier than opening day and sort of mucked in and sort of, helped electricians and builders where we could. We dug the irrigation in for some of the landscaping work, and then we were in once we were ready to go. So it was early days, absolutely, when I joined the team. But the initial commissioning of the stills and the procurement of the equipment was done by Desiree prior to the team arriving.
Can I just ask about the stills? There's a wonderful video on the website. You are clambering all over them, and equipment. But could you just explain what you've got there? Number of stills, mash tuns, etc.
The Forsyth family were instrumental in the design of the plant. They came out here and cut the ribbon on opening day, and they were a huge part of Desiree's kind of thought process in the design. They designed our mash tun, which is a 1.5 ton mash tun. We have 2 Forsyth copper pot stills that create our single malt whiskey. We have a pair of Jacob Carl column stills to create our single malt white spirit. And then our gin still was custom built by a friend of the owner's families. And it was almost an afterthought. It was Desiree's husband that sort of said, look, if I'm going to sell my business and throw everything at this as well, I want a gin. So it's sort of tucked in the corner of the room. But incredible foresight, because it's been a very valuable part of the portfolio.
And so as a result of that double distillation, your 1.5 sort of tons of grist, I guess, what's your sort of output per year, just to get a rough idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, production of whiskey is about a barrel a day, a 200 litre, we say ex-bourbon cask, I guess, would be about a barrel a day. If we were to work through the night, 24 hours a day, and not make white spirits, so divert all of our wash to whiskey, our total production would be 4 barrels a day. So we're tiny.
Yeah, but from acorns does big things grow. Do big things grow, and you know, you just need to look at successful distilleries that have started small and done it really, really well around the world, and there's many of them. Even in Scotland, think of someone like Kilhoman. Think of one or two others that have really started to grow. And there's a big growth of whiskey in New Zealand, which is great, and you're obviously part of that. How many distilleries are there in New Zealand now, roughly?
Oh, there would be, I mean, less than 100. I mean, it really is we feel like we're really at the tip of the sword in terms of the industry's growth. Whiskey distilleries, not many at all, but we're at a really exciting part of our history where we're just now defining what New Zealand whiskey means and what a New Zealand single malt means. That
was my next question. That was just what I was about to ask. As a New Zealand producer of a single malt, at the moment, do you follow the SWA rules in terms of, or I mean, Japan's only just defined what things are in the last week or two, and they've been going at it for 100 years nearly. So
that was very exciting to see. We do. We very much do respect that as being almost sort of an international law, and we had every intention of competing in an international market and sitting on the shelves with the greats. So it made sense to us to have our quality standard be right up there as well.
Yeah. And Gordon, can I just check you are recording this?
He's referring to a episode we did a couple of weeks ago. Laurel and Harvey.
I just suddenly thought you weren't, but okay.
No, I'm not.
There's a little red light there. I think we're okay.
No, that's good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it is. I didn't see that. Brilliant.
Sorry, my mind was wandering to the whiskey to my left-hand side.
So yeah. Look, I've got a couple of whiskies here, but look, we want to talk more. We want to get an idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with one of mine. I've got a PX cask or a Pinot Noir. 65.6, 64.5. These are, as you say, these are journey. You know, this is on a journey through to an older style. Which one should I go for first?
I would start with the Pinot Noir, the 280.
Okay.
You should probably take a moment to explain that David has been very kind to you, and those samples have been hand drawn from casks that we have personally selected to be available for a kind of a special tour experience where you're led into a separate room and you draw from a barrel. So you actually can't buy that whiskey that you have in your hand.
You've got to go to the South Island. That's a trick Indy, Gordon.
You've got to come and visit us. You've got to get you in the barrel, smell them.
As soon as you drink that, Gordon, that's your ticket's got to be bought.
Can I just say I am due to be in New Zealand next year, so I will be coming to see you. Let's hope we can do that. Right, I'm going with the Pinot Noir, the Family Reserve. Here we go. 65.6. David, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And Sarah, just on that point, you're saying you can go to the distillery and draw these out of a cask. What is as you'll know, tourism in Scotland for whiskey tourism is huge and it's growing. What's it like in New Zealand? Are you getting the when not a pandemic bodies through the door, getting enthusiasm?
No, we are, absolutely. People are very interested. I mean, we're in an area that is famous for wine. So there is already that established culture of visiting wineries and doing wine tastings. Appreciation for craft beer has just absolutely blown up. So wine and beer have paved the way, and now it's sort of up to the spirit makers of New Zealand to introduce spirits as something worth having, every day as opposed to just in special occasions.
Really exciting. It's exciting, isn't it?
It's a lot of fun. I've come from a winemaking background, and people often ask me if I would like to go back. And as much as I love my time in that industry, the youth of the spirits industry here in New Zealand and that excitement around it is so intoxicating.
Are you excited, Gordon?
This is fabulous. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on here, and I'm. This is absolutely. It doesn't nose of 65.6%. It's quite. Background, it's quite mellow on the nose. There's some real floral sort of. It's got a really lovely nose on it. On the taste, yes, you get a little bit of the alcohol, but I mean, it's not. It's real. If this is what it's not even 4 years old, nearly 4 years old when it was drawn. That's incredible. Absolutely beautiful. So, how did you put this? Is this full term, obviously, in that Pinot Noir cask?
So it's that same barrel is still sitting in that room, available to be hand drawn from. So when you visit, you pull that bottle, and it was bottled on that day. That one was filled August 2016, And the Pinot Noir maturation program came on a little later. We started with strictly ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, and predominantly Oloroso. So the Pinots are a little younger, but we've been really excited to see how they've worked with our new mixed spirit. I mean, I think we're seeing maturation characters earlier than what we maybe expected. Perhaps the altitude, perhaps the swings from hot to cold, but we've been excited to see how the Pinot works with the new Mac. That was Dave Broom's pick, and looking through a few when he visited us, was the Pinot Noir.
If it's Dave Broom's pick, I love it. So yeah, no, that I have to say, for the age that is, and I'm not, you know, I think great whiskies can be any age, but that is utterly fabulous.
It's going in the casket. What percentage? 65 after 4.
At 66, so that one really hasn't dropped off much at all.
Right.
Nice. So if you were to describe your new make spirit, Sarah, how would you describe it in a few words?
A big word would be toffee. I think it's incredibly creamy and sweet. You get a lot of, in a single malt white spirit, that banana and pear ester is really predominant. So that's there under that whiskey. So there is very much a fruit forward focus to it. But I'd use words like toffee, like honey, maybe pear.
Oh, that is lovely. That is with a bit of water, just to for me. I love the way it creams up in the mouth. It becomes a bit creamier in the mouth. Lovely. A lot of body in a whiskey of you know, just shy of 4 years old. I have to say that is utterly fabulous. And David, wow, thank you, David. So if we look a little bit at the casks, I love a bit of maturation. Your ex-bourbon casks, your Pinot casks, your PX casks, what oak type are you using for those? Are they from New Zealand or are they from other parts of the world?
Other parts of the world. So all of the bourbon, they're all ex-Kentucky.
Bourbon from Bourbon
and
from
then
America.
we've had one container load from Breckenridge, Colorado, but the rest have all been Kentucky.
Okay.
And then first fill Oloroso sherry butts from Gonzales Bios.
Yeah.
A little bit of PX thrown in the mix. And then the local ones are all those, the ex wines. So all of the Pinot Noirs come from a couple from Mount Difficulty, most from Felton Road, which is a phenomenal Pinot Noir producer just over the hill in Bannockburn, Central Otago.
Wow, that sounds absolutely wonderful. And I saw on the website there was a debate about where to locate the distillery at the beginning. And I wonder, Gord, it's a question for you as well, because it's been in the news about terroir and where you locate your distillery. Would it have been a different characteristics if you had located it other than where you are right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely something. Terroir is very much a term that has been around the wine industry for some time, and I think it is absolutely fitting to then talk about it with whiskey, and not just your water supply, but just where your barrels lay while they mature. I think it's huge.
I think that's a big point. I mean, we know barley can influence whiskey, of course, barley styles. We've seen it with Bruichladdich and one or two other people using different barleys, which can influence, of course. But certainly the warehousing and the location, if you think about it, I actually described it as this, and I think it's not a bad analogy. If you have a whiskey in a very green area like Glengoyne or, a little bit maybe like Cardrona, and you put a car there for 10 years and you put a car on Islay for 10 years, and then you go back 10 years later to each car, one will be covered in moss and the other one will be rusty. And that's a sort of really simple way of describing how the weather and how that sort of elements can have an impact over time on your whiskey. I think that's a little bit would you agree with that, Sarah? Or is that completely?
I do, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key element is time, is it's not just something that's a year later, you really have to think years and years. And there's just no way that couldn't be a huge part of the flavor profile at the end of the run.
Absolutely. So Gordon, why don't you have a bit try of yours, which is available in the UK from all major specialist retailers?
Yes. This is Growing Wings.
I've got this one here too, so I'll join you as well.
This is Growing Wings. Just explain that. It's a lovely name, but what's the inspiration behind the title, Growing Wings?
Absolutely. So Growing Wings is the second of our progress reports. So prior to this launch, we had a multiple expressions under the umbrella of Just Hatched. So we're following the progress of a young falcon. So a young native New Zealand bird. It actually landed, it returns to us, but it landed on our wash still, our copper pot wash still, as it was being crane lifted into the building. So we've kind of claimed it as somewhat of a brand ambassador in itself. And this Growing Wings is the second progress report. To find its way into a bottle under the Growing Wings umbrella, it must be at least 5 years in cask.
And it is the only brand ambassador, whiskey brand ambassador in the world that can actually fly at the moment, which is a major point.
Mostly just domestically, but that's okay.
Yeah, you're okay domestically. So, Gordon, what's it like? Come on.
Oh, it's wonderful. You see a lot going on there. The first thing I got, it's just that lovely smoothness, when it, that creamy smoothness, and then, as you say, that lovely fruity starts to sort of appear. And right now, I got a lovely little tingle in the back of my tongue as it's little biting my tongue, and I've got a long finish down to about there at the moment. But
what strength is it at?
Full bodied, 61.2.
Oh, nice. And so, I mean, sorry, carry on.
A little bit of raisins. You mentioned raisins. Now got that little sort of darker, fruity notes as well, but lovely and sweet and fruity and creamy. And 61 point, you would never think that. First taste.
Sounds great.
Really smooth.
So is that available only in a few markets at the moment, or?
So we've focused our attention on the UK. We're all about you guys. You're our first export market and our key export market. We do have a small supply in Australia, but we wanted to go straight to the UK and really sort of sit on the shelves with these whiskies that have inspired Desiree. So it is available in the UK. There is not a lot of it. The sample that you have is one from a single cask bottling. So it was only one single sherry butt that went to this bottling. And the Solera expression of the Growing Wings will be available. We're launching it on International Whiskey Day, so May 15th.
And what's that Solera expression? How's that? What's that? Ooh, what's going on there?
Solera for us is a marriage of select bourbon and sherry butts brought together. To be a Growing Wings Solera, they must be over 5 years old. So I'll actually be bottling our very first one next week. And then we'll be getting it on the water and getting it over to you.
Oh, fantastic. So everybody in Europe, particularly now, because it's really hard to get things from Brexit into Europe, but UK, fantastic. I'm sure it will be expanding as you get more and more sort of casks over. And wow, that looks great.
Sarah, why the UK? It's a big world out there. What was the thoughts?
I think really it is just because so much of Desiree's training and research was centred in Scotland. She did spend a fair amount of time in the States as well, and I think they're very much on the priority list of being maybe the second location. But I mean, we were never going to compete in a commodity market. We were always going to shoot for the highest possible quality whiskey that we could ever make, and I think it is internationally recognised that the Scots do know what they're doing. So we wanted to get over there and be competitive.
You say that.
I'm delighted you made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could, this is a question. I think what I've tasted there, and that Pinot Noir is just beautiful. I mean, fabulous. The Growing Wings sounds amazing, and I'll get the remainder of that sample off Gordon before he finishes it, and I'll swap him with one of mine.
Okay.
If you... And I think as you say, do you have an ambitious? If you could say, I really want to produce a style of whiskey like this, is there a particular whiskey that you think I'd love to be able to produce something that's similar to that? Or, I mean, obviously you have your own unique stills and all that sort of thing, but is there a particular, you said Speyside whiskey. Is there anything that you look at Scotch and you go, I'd love to be as good as that? Or
it's a hard one because I think we either want to pigeon. We're still at this sort of young point where we have all we can go and
you can go anywhere. Yeah, totally.
And I think in visiting Scotland and from the distilleries that I have visited, I was definitely drawn into Glenfarclas and how they really just focus on doing something really well, rather than having, you know, every expression under the sun. They have their kind of core range and they do it really well. And I think we need to really hone our craft and do something really well before we get to experimental. For us, experimental is just finding the best way that we can create the best whiskey that we possibly can here. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example. Glenfarclas, what they do it well. The family-run Scottish business, great Scottish business. Not, you know, and certainly I would agree. It's a great example to take as a sort of you know, a sort of model maybe to look at. But as you say,
even
you
on
have
that,
you have the ability to move around.
No, just saying, Gordon, on that question, could I ask Sarah, doesn't need to stay in Scotland, since it's Whisky Unscripted, you know, desert island whiskies. What would you grab to you know, give us 2, 3 or 4 whiskies you'd, apart from your own, but you'd grab to go and stay for a year on an island? Unlimited supply of 3, 4.
It doesn't have to be Scotland, but I think it kind of is. You know, I visited Islay and not liking peat, and I made the mistake of telling the locals that, so it sort of became a personal mission of a local bartender to convert me, and he did. He was successful. So I'd say probably a Beaumont 15 would be with me.
One of my favourite whiskies. Yep.
Great. I just think it has the right amount of peat for me. I like it. It pulls you in.
Nice.
Oh goodness, what else? This is hard.
I know it's hard. Gordon used to work for Beaumont. So you've done well.
Yeah.
You've done pick the box. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of at the point in my career where I just want to taste and try everything. That I don't really have this sort of list of go-to favorites. I'm more excited about walking into a store and grabbing something I've never tried.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think
I can organise that. I'll organise that in Ireland. Yeah, you got delivery every month.
And that's a great whiskey attitude. Absolutely right. You know, I think you know, it's now just so much choice. If you go from New Zealand, even, you know, through Asia to India to, you know, Europe to the UK to Scotland to America. I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount of whiskies out there now, and it's fabulous to keep that sort of, you know, just everybody try something different. When you go to a whiskey show, if you really like, you know, Glenfiddich, don't go to their stand. Actually, go to somebody else's. You know, try something different. Absolutely, and you know, we hope that you know, we're all able to get down to New Zealand. Hopefully, maybe coming early next year, which would be great. So the final part I want to just ask about is, so you've got your great spirit, you fill it into these casks, and you're maturing it. Altitude, obviously, a little bit of altitude in there. You're maturing it in a hotter summer, a colder winter. Are you doing sort of rack house style warehousing? Are you doing palletized? Do you have a more sort of Scottish style warehouse, or do you not? I don't know.
We Distiller initially looked into sort of a dunnage style floor for environmental reasons. Actually, that prohibited. We couldn't risk a spill. This area that the distillery lies in is considered outstanding natural landscape. So it
looks stunning.
We're very much under these sort of conditions of really looking after where we are, which is great. That's what we want to do anyway. So dunnage sort of flooring went out the window. So it is a concrete floor, and it is we kind of just created our own racking system. So we've gone up.
Wow.
We're in the process of designing a new warehouse, which will have a racking system yet again, not palletized. I think in the new design, we'll think a little bit more about accessing casks. It can be a little tricky.
yeah. There's always that issue. You're like, oh, great. And then can we get the one in the middle? Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a great idea when you're sort of filling it. You're like, we'll capitalize on this space, get them in there. On the other end. So we'll think a little bit more carefully about that in the new warehouse, but we are racking it. It is a heavily insulated warehouse. The doors are opening and closing as we welcome visitors, sure. And in the heat of summer, we do sort of practice just getting the hose out and wetting the floor down to try and keep a bit of humidity in the room. But I mean, the place is a huge influence on the whiskey, and we let it do the talking, really.
It's talking well. And I would like to ask, last week we had one of the world's leading truffle makers on talking about pairing whiskey and chocolate and all these lovely flavours. Earlier on in this episode, we had those lovely almonds that and our friend Diego is just starting his journey and trying to create something made from in Spain that connects with Scotch whisky. What would you recommend with the whiskies that Gordon's got, or the whiskies that I've got, that would pair well with food? And I've seen there's a lovely menu at your distillery. I'd love to come down and sample some of the food there. You've got little small bites, and you've got some, lovely drinks to go alongside that. But generally speaking, what would go well with a Cardrona?
Yeah, sure thing. No, the restaurant offering is still very new to us. We're really excited about it. We've taken on a phenomenal young chef, Chef Kim, and he's doing wonders. And the newest one would be venison. Actually, I would never have thought. He has a beautiful venison dish that works like it's incredible with the growing wings. And prior to his excellence coming in, the tour where you draw the samples from the barrels, so the samples that you have in hand. We do a food pairing, and we haven't made it in this sort of really kind of pompous, this is a perfect match way. We make it a bit of a roller coaster. So we get people to try whiskies with something salty, with something sweet, and with a cheese, just to show them it actually, you can pair whiskies with so many different things, and to show them how it works. So
could not agree more. Could not agree more. I think, what I love about, and I speak quite a lot about this, is people drink, you always go, oh, what are you going to have? Oh, I'll have some fish. Oh, let's get some white wine.
Yeah.
Have some meat. Let's get some red wine. Whiskey is so much better than that. I generally, you can, sorry, Sarah, carry on.
Yeah, pairing, it doesn't have to be complimentary. It can be, it can catch, and that can be exciting as well.
Exactly, and we talked about that as well a little bit. And can I just say that PX? Oh yes, how beautifully rich is that? This is your dessert after dinner, fantabulous dram. This is, and really doesn't seem. I mean, I'm not going to add water to this at 64.5% alcohol. This is absolutely fabulous. Very thick layer of that Pedro Jimenez, but beautiful, beautiful whiskey. But the spirit stands up in there as well. That's fabulous.
This one is slightly unique in that it wasn't, it hasn't been in PX for the entirety of the maturation. It started in bourbon and has been finished in PX. So it's got a little bit of both going on in the glass.
Yeah. A nice thick layer though on top of that, but there's still that sort of structure underneath it, which is fabulous. Lovely, lovely whiskey. I'm a big fan of that. To be honest, my favorite of the two. There we are. Sarah, before we wrap up, I'd just like to say thank you for your time. I know it's quite early over there. So thank you. Gordon, anything you'd like to add?
All I was thinking in the back of my mind was, what's the team? Who are the team? You mentioned the chef, and I loved that when I saw the menu, and it was really good quality food as well. It wasn't just your poker chips or a burger. It was blooming good food with great whiskey. But apart from the chef, what's the team? Just what numbers are you? How?
We're still under 40. We're at about 37 with 7 of our staff members based in the UK. We haven't handed our whiskey off to distributors. We have territory managers that sort of hit the pavement and really sell Cardrona. They're legends. And then here we have sort of anywhere from sort of 5 to 10 people on site. The distillation team, the production team is myself, working very closely with Desiree, of course, and then we have 3. Actually, they're all female distillers in the production team at the moment, which is pretty cool. International Women's Day coming up, so got to
absolutely.
I've got 2 daughters, so I'm delighted to hear that as well. Fantastic.
Absolutely, and yeah, no, that's fantastic. Really, really great. Well, I mean, I can't wait to come visit. I mean, I want to get on a jet plane tomorrow. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, but if things hopefully keep going the way they are, that's good.
Yes, and we should be able to get this to a specialist retailer. Would that be right? If people can go onto the website and see where it is retailing in their part of the UK.
They're online, absolutely. So you can find your
growing wings, fantastic. And I'd just like to say thank you to Georgia, who's based in the UK. Georgia helped to get the samples to Gordon. So Georgia, thank you for that.
You're on my mind, Georgia. Thank you so much.
Unbelievable. Sarah, look, thank you very much. This is surely going to give us a boost in the New Zealand charts. I think we might hit the top 30. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you, and I am more than. I mean, I think your whiskey's beautiful, really, really lovely. Although young, I still think it's fabulous. Congratulations on producing such
absolutely
stuff.
We're
and we'll both turn up at some point soon.
Sounds great. We'll be ready.
And good luck, Team New Zealand.
Yeah, they're gonna do it, hands down. I'll be there.
Brilliant.
And we say Slanjava.
Slanjava. Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that was
fabulous.
Fascinating. Brilliant.
Fabulous. And a great reflection on how important, even in a distillery in the South Island of New Zealand, how both, lady driven it all the way from in her head to a concept to a delivery of a distillery, and Sarah there producing the spirit. Absolutely fantastic.
On International Women's Day, or the week of International Women's Day, you couldn't get that. Really sums it up, sums up the future. And if you get a chance, if you're listening to this or watching it, the Cardrona website, the video that starts the whole website is just amazing. It's jaw-dropping, the views, and if you like your Lord of the Rings, check that video out.
Oh, it's been amazing. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, great.
Gordon, news just in. Beep, 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 beep. News just in. I don't have a special effect here.
No, clearly.
I could say the mailbag is bulging this week.
Well, I mean, that a bit like my mailbag is bulging when it's Valentine's Day.
We have got literally 3.
What?
Mailbags with a piece of mail in each one of them. Susan Allen was, how are you doing, yeah. Susan? She was saying it was a great show. As always, she was enjoying the Ian Burnett show, but I've just lost her comment there, but she's still got a few weeks of Lent still to go. So it is driving her crazy. But Susan, thank you very much for that. Well, Steve Laidlaw puts the big US tariffs on single malt have gone. He says, fabulous, Gordon Dundas will be loving that. And we've talked that already. And finally, Richard Cutler. Richard, how are you? It's my 40th birthday in a couple of weeks. Which whiskey would the two Gordons recommend to celebrate this milestone with? Are there any special releases? And I then contacted him back about budget, and he said, and about peat. He says, 50-60 pound. I don't mind peat. He's got a Lafroig Select, a 6 Isles, and a Talisker 10 in his cupboard. So, over to you, Gordon.
Well, 6 Isles, what a great whiskey. All of those whiskies are great. Talisker's a great whiskey. Something a little bit special, something a little bit limited. I would, from our perspective, if you like the peat, I think the fact you've got 6 Isles is great, a blended malt. I would go for something like Rum Riot.
Yeah,
which is finished in rum casks.
The Rum Rebel, that's right.
That's Rum Rebel. Apologies,
I know
I get it mixed up.
The riots with it. So that's it there. So that's
Rum Rebel. That's a good one to go for. That's a heavily peated Islay whiskey finished in rum casks, pretty rare. The other thing I would recommend also, we've also got the Sherry Bomb. So from our perspective, I would look at maybe those two that would fit very much into your price point, both quite limited. The other thing might be a good idea would be to just hang off till about May, when the fish bottlings will come out. They'll have bottlings potentially around about that price point. Maybe you want to get one of them to celebrate your birthday with. If you like the peat, they'll be a little bit different. Just a few thoughts there. Anything to add?
The Islay Festival, not at all, Gordon. Just our teapot dram will be out later on in the year, so that's maybe a bit too far in the future. And I always think if you're looking for something a little bit unusual, I always like to maybe look at the Compass Box website. And I'm just on one right now, Spice Tree. Which sounds... Whiskey. Oh, you had it, Gordon. That sounds really good.
It's a good whiskey. I like what Compass Box do. So, yeah, absolutely. So there's if you like a peated whiskey, there is not a lack of options. So I would go for something you've just not tried, and have a look at a few reviews. Maybe don't listen to us, but I would. I'm joking. Both those smokeheads are fantastic. So there we go.
Well, what's quite good about that, Gordon, is I'll have some suggestions for when I'm 40. So I'll note that down. So excellent, Richard.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Move on.
Yeah.
Gordon, that is the end of episode 4
Fabulous.
of Whisky Unscripted. That really was. We'll give it to you, Sarah. It was wonderful. And I think that's really all there is to say. Next week, we're going to be doing a little bit of food pairing. with lovely Diego Boras and
Yes.
his lovely almonds. So we'll do that.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. I've heard a lot about these almonds. I'm looking forward to it. We'll be covering some other random topics in the next few episodes, running up to sort of mid-April, when we'll take another break, and then we'll be on in the summer. So, look, it's been fabulous. Thank you. We'll see you all in 10 days' time with episode 5.
We're doing a 10-dayer. Okay, goodbye. Got there.
Bye-bye.
On the whiskey trail.